Chapter 296 Thousands of Apex Sovereigns. In the Ethereum realm, Arcane Continent, City of Arcana. After the dimensional teleportation array and the sensation of being pulled by the world will, Maximus carefully looked at the new environment. However, before he could admire the change, his body couldn't help but tense. Even though he didn't feel any killing intent, he felt multiple Apex Sovereigns blatantly staring at his body. At this dash, Maximus calmed down and looked around. Seeing his family unaffected, he heaved a sigh of relief. These Apex Sovereigns must be looking at him because of his connection to the Dimensional Merchant. As soon as he guessed that, those Apex Sovereigns directly teleported in front of him. A Maximus Shadowcrest, they muttered, looking at him carefully. After a rough look, there should be at least 1,000 Tier 9 powerhouses in front of him. If it weren't for his confidence in his strength, he would probably be trembling by now. So, this is the foundation of the Ethereum realm. In the Abyss Assembly years ago, he only saw a few hundred Apex Sovereigns and thought nothing of it. However, seeing over 1,000 Apex Sovereigns from different parts of the world, Maximus couldn't help but marvel at the Ethereum realm foundation. Furthermore, without the suppression of the Abyss acting on these Apex Sovereigns, their aura felt more frightening and full, as if the whole world was in their palm. No need to be tense, these individuals were just eager to meet you. Fialon smiled and unconsciously protected him. Maximus' connection with another dimension wasn't a significant concern for Fialon. Maximus was a student of his academy first and foremost. Second, most importantly, Maximus was a being of the Ethereum realm, fighting for the same world. Fialon didn't covet Maximus' property but was merely curious and vigilant regarding the so-called Dimensional Merchant. "Thank you, Dean," Maximus smiled, seeing his backer. Although he also had an essence of law to protect himself, he could only protect himself. Maximus was not sure if he could protect his family in front of this army of Apex Sovereigns. Could we leave here first?" Knowing what they wanted, Maximus was also eager to do business. However, seeing the crowd, the place they were in was not suitable for talking business. I nearly forgot, let's go to the Tower of Arcana," Fialon smiled, waving his hand. At the top of the Tower of Arcana, Maximus, his family, and the 1,000 Apex Sovereigns quietly teleported. "Should you return first?" Before looking at those Apex Sovereigns, he asked about his wives. "Let us return first," they nodded in understanding, hearing the meaning of his words. Maximus was about to scam these Apex Sovereigns. What would happen next may put them in danger. They may even be threatened at some point if the negotiation goes awry. "Then see you later." Maximus used the amalgamation of will and directly teleported them to the Moonlight Empire. Although he knew that City Arcana was safer, there were more variables. At least in the Moonlight Empire, his family could still have time to escape once something happened. It can be said that Maximus was more thorough in considering all the risks. Looking at Maximus's operation, the Apex Sovereigns in the room didn't seem impatient, instead, they were in shock. Such strong control of the amalgamation of will. They already knew everything about Maximus, from his birth, every being he knew, all the places he had been through, etc. Thus, seeing him use the amalgamation of will, they were not surprised. What shocked them was his amazing control. They had only seen this level of control from those holy emperors who ruled the Cursed Continent in the past. Moreover, seeing Maximus's ease, it seemed that his control over the amalgamation of will was much deeper. "Ahem, shall we start?" Maximus asked, seeing them look at him blankly. It's quite effective," Maximus thought, looking there and dazed. Using the amalgamation of will was a show of power, making the follower of negotiation later. Good," Fialon nodded and began to introduce the people around. Most of them were from the top forces of the world who already got the news from the Abyss early on. However, due to dimensional restrictions, they couldn't transport a large amount of cash. Hearing that Maximus was returning to the Ethereum realm, they quickly put down what they were doing and came to the Arcane Continent. There were also various individuals who had heard about Maximus and were curious. If possible, they also wanted to exchange 1 or 2 weapons. As for the top powerhouses of the Ethereum realm, besides Fialon, there was no one. For those who were already at the peak, no matter what external things they had, it was useless. Without the world advancing to Tier 10, everything would be for naught. As for things that could artificially advance a dimension, Rakasha already asked Maximus about this. Unfortunately, besides the Abyss Source, which is a world origin fragment, and Crystal Merits, which is the origin of the Abyss, nothing else would work. If there is, it couldn't just be bought in a prototype transdimensional system. After all, things could make a dimension advance was a monopolized resource that every dimension coveted. After knowing all the individuals in the room, Maximus began to introduce the status quo of the dimensional merchant, telling them what they were selling and so on. Soon after a bit of internal discussion, most of those from top forces handed him a list and some money. With a scan of his spiritual consciousness, Maximus estimated there were hundreds of septillion low-level magic crystals handed to him. This was equivalent to hundreds of quintillion crystal merits. With at least a 50% intermediary fee, Maximus earned significantly in this transaction. After satisfying all the requests of those powerhouses, Maximus and Fialon were alone in the room. "Adine?" Maximus asked, seeing that Fialon seemed to have something to tell him. "How is Malgrin?" Fialon asked. Maximus was not too shocked hearing Fialon knew that he was in contact with Malgrin. With Maximus's interaction with Malgrin over these years, he was already somehow infected with his aura. This thing stuck to him like glue, that he couldn't remove it even with the help of the amalgamation of will. He could only temporarily hide it using his domain. However, as the top powerhouse of the world, Fialon saw through it effortlessly. Like Malgrin, Fialon and the other two, Alabaster and Riadius, touched the edge of the origin of law. This is also why they needed to suppress themselves all the time, using only their clones for any activities. Possessing a trace of the origin of law, the Ethereum realm's world will saw them as the most tasteful delicacy, wanting to devour them all the time. They even thought of going to the abyss so as not to suppress themselves all the time. However, the Ethereum realm's world wouldn't let them go. Besides Rakasha, who can freely go into the abyss despite also possessing a hint of the origin of law. The trio can only be stuck here, wishing to tear the Ethereum realm for its shamelessness. Unfortunately, it's their home, without which they wouldn't even exist. They can only hope to advance the Ethereum realm quickly and be freed from this quagmire. Excellency Malgrin is doing great. After I created a stronghold that couldn't be detected by the abyss, Excellency Malgrin can finally interact with society. That's good, Fialon muttered with a smile. For this old friend who always bullied them, Fialon was still happy. For the trio, Malgrin was like a big brother who may bully them but stands up at critical times to protect them. Like countless epochs ago, when the abyss was about to invade them, Malgrin sacrificed his close friends and comrades without a second thought just to give the Ethereum realm some time. He also rushed forward into the abyss without fear, using his own body to delay the abyss for a longer time. Hearing that Malgrin was finally taking a break from all the fight, Fialon was genuinely happy. Maximus then began to tell what Malgrin had been doing since he went to the stronghold. Like the establishment of Battle Axe Bar, which is Malgrin's main entertainment. As for the dangers of the abyss, Maximus didn't delve into the details. Otherwise, Fialon might detect something in his words and question him about it. Finally, after reminiscing and talking about all kinds of things, Maximus was ready to go back. "Oh wait. Oh, what's the matter, Dean?" Maximus asked in puzzlement. "You should be careful," Fialon warned. Although he didn't covet Maximus's wealth, it cannot be said that the others were also unmoved. Even if they knew that Maximus had the backing of the dimensional merchant, most of them had no fear. When it comes to profits, there is no such thing as fear. Furthermore, to rise from a bunch of mortals to an apex sovereign, they didn't lack any courage. Earlier, seeing Maximus receive septillion magic crystals, some of them had a change of heart. Noticing these, Fialon tried to warn his student. As for the rest, it's up to faith. He was merely a clone, he couldn't fight the whole world just because of a student. He could only hope this student live up to his talent and pass all the coming tribulations. "I know," Maximus nodded seriously. For those who coveted his wealth, they better be ready to face the consequences. Chapter 297 The Westle Empire. In Curse Continent, Moonlight Empire. Using the amalgamation of will, Maximus quickly teleported from the city of Arcana to his empire. "Your Majesty." Doran greeted as if aware of his return. "You're here. Where are the others?" "They are in the kitchen, preparing a feast for your return," Doran said. Earlier, Doran was shocked to see Maximus' family teleport in front of him. Doran had studied everything about the abyss. He knew that it would usually take a few hundred to 1,000 years, even for the talented individual to reach Tier 8. Thus, seeing the entire Shadowcrest family appear in front of him left him in shock. This was not like the shortcut Maximus had performed in the past when he returned to the Ethereum realm using a special method. Doran personally felt a mighty power that only Tier 8 beings possess. If it were not for the unique crest that only the royal family possesses, Doran might have thought they were enemies in disguise trying to attack and disturb the Empire. After all, using the amalgamation of will, all kinds of weird attacks had been done to the Empire, and disguising as a royal family was nothing new. There was even one time when a spy was disguised as him. Even the Empire array failed to detect any anomalies. At that time the Empire fell into confusion as people didn't know who to believe. Fortunately, Doran cultivates using origin. After easily defeating the spy and having the general examine the fake Doran, everything went back to normal. After that, to prevent spies from confusing the Empire, those in higher and more important positions were given something that couldn't be easily copied. They also closed the Empire's teleportation array, isolating it from the outside world. I see. Could you tell me about the Empire? Maximus asked, taking his time while his family prepared the food. Although he had already read the news in the Abyss, it would be better to know the current state of the Empire in person. The Empire is still stable with all the backup plans His Majesty set up at the beginning, Doran confidently said. Despite being attacked frequently by all kinds of weird methods, the Empire still stood tall. All the citizens in the Empire could still eat, sleep, work, study as they were supposed to do.
Is that so?
Maximus raised an eyebrow as he investigated the Empire using his domain. With a range of billions of kilometers, the Moonlight Empire and its bordering sea were presented in front of him. The aura of the Empire is a little thin. He thought it was just because he was used to the dense aura and felt the Empire's thin aura was normal. However, upon closer inspection, the Empire's aura was unusually thinner. This is still because the Empire had a Tier 7 Empires array. If not, maybe the Empire would be back to its barren form in the past. This? It should be the doing of the ruler of the Westle Empire, Doran said helplessly. Although the Empire was still safe, they could only be passive, hiding within the Empire. The Westle Empire could do whatever they wanted, as long as they didn't step into the range of the Tier 8 puppets. It's the amalgamation of will, Maximus muttered. He felt it was quite a clever application that only those who had expert mastery in the amalgamation of will could achieve. It seems that this ruler still has something up his sleeve, Maximus muttered in amazement. To accelerate the imperial domination to this degree, it couldn't only be with the interference of an outside force. The ruler of the Westle Empire himself is quite talented. Taking Doran with him, Maximus teleported to the edge of the Empire. Triangle Island. Maximus and Doran quietly appeared on the island. It seems that the people here are a little pale, Maximus muttered with a frown. He teleported to the edge of the Empire so that his domain could spread further, allowing him to investigate the nearby land. However, upon seeing the pale faces of the people on the island, he couldn't help but frown. Your Majesty, this is caused by the lack of magical nutrition, Doran explained. This had been a lingering problem for a few years since the Westle Empire attacked the Moonlight Empire. The ruler of the Westle Empire, Khan, seemed to put the Moonlight Empire under a curse. Although it's seemingly harmless, it's a poison that will erode the Empire in the long run. It's been hundreds of years since the establishment of the Moonlight Empire. The population had also grown from a few million to hundreds of trillions. Furthermore, under Maximus's unlimited investment, all the people possessed amazing strength. From soldiers to the lowest beggar, everyone was at least a knight or a mage. Even newborns had the strength of an apprentice. This prosperity can only be found in the most prosperous cities in the arcane continent. However, with the thinning of the aura and the invisible curse, mortals began to be born and people started regressing in strength. The curse seemed to drain them of any magical energy. From plants, land, water, people, anything that possesses magic energy will be drained of it. It's estimated that after thousands of years, without any replenishment, the Moonlight Empire would turn into a barren land devoid of any living. I see. Maximus nodded upon seeing this. Just now, at the edge of the Empire, Maximus felt a dense group of amalgamation of will that was slowly sucking away all the energy in the Empire. What a daring fellow! Maximus muttered in anger. Absorb. Enclosing the dense amalgamation of will outside the Empire in his domain, he directly absorbs it as his own. It's mine. No, it's for the Empire. Maximus thought with a smile. Soon the amalgamation of will he just absorbed melted into the empire, giving it a surge of vitality.
What happened? This? Is your majesty back?
Looking at the mana surging and flowing into their bodies. Their thin and pale bodies seemed to be invigorated as they felt their strength quietly returning. Suddenly, a person, no a god, the ruler of Moonlight Empire popped into their mind.
Aha! Your majesty is indeed back.
A man exclaimed, reading the news on his token.
What? Your majesty is back.
The crowd didn't even care about the flowing mana in their bodies and took out their tokens.
A shop clerk, tip, I found the goddess of luck, Asha, shopping in the mall. Could it be your majesty is back?
The top pin post was so eye-catching that everyone who opened their token saw this. Coupled with the surging mana in their body, the crowd concluded that their majesty was indeed back.
Your majesty is back.
The crowd couldn't help but laugh in celebration. Although they didn't suffer much in the raging war, the stress they accumulated is still present. However, with their majesty's presence, it seems that all the fatigue and tiredness in their bodies vanish instantly.
Your majesty?
Mother, can you tell me about what kind of person your majesty is? A 2-year-old child couldn't help but ask her mother.
Then let me tell you.
Maximus, seeing that everything went back to normal, a smile appeared on his face. Your majesty, Doran muttered excitedly upon feeling the surging energy. In a few minutes, the problem that was plaguing the empire was solved just like that.
No worries,
Maximus patted his shoulder. With his current strength, such a problem was nothing. Doran also calmed down and silently watched his majesty on the side. As for Maximus, he continued to observe the surrounding amalgamation of will that he couldn't absorb. Only the curse that sucked the will of his citizens was what he could absorb. The amalgamation of will had different frequencies for different people, like mana. No matter how much his mastery on one, he couldn't absorb the mana of others and used it on his own. Of course, using a special method, one could easily absorb mana. However, the amalgamation of will is a powerful energy that reaches that of the essence of law. Without a higher tier method, absorbing other frequencies amalgamation of will is impossible.
Zofast.
Upon further investigation, the denseness of the remaining energy is only possible after conquering over half of the cursed continent.
However, how long has it been since the start of the all-out war?
100 years? 1,000 years? It hasn't even reached 30 years, yet over half of the cursed continent was already conquered by the Westle Empire.
Is there no one resisting the Westle Empire?
Maximus turned to Doran and asked.
None, your majesty.
The Westle Empire is too strong. Decades ago, when the Westle Empire started its aggression, a few top empires allied and retaliated to curb its development. However, in just a few days, those allied empires vanished from the map. Chapter 298 Completing the Transaction.
They died so quickly?
Maximus was a little shocked. The top empires were not that simple. After surviving for epochs, passing multiple era of imperial domination, they shouldn't be easy to kill. With various trump cards, even an apex sovereign would eat a pot once they become desperate. To kill them so quickly, it seems that the ruler of the Westle Empire was stronger than he thought.
However, couldn't they just escape? How could they die?
As a top empire, they should have teleportation array directly to the Arcane Continent. The Arcane Continent is called a veritable heaven for a reason. It's the safest place anybody can set foot in. As long as you have money, not even an apex sovereign can easily kill you.
They did escape, but it's useless.
Andrew shook his head as he sighed. Emperor Khan seems to kill people invisibly, no matter the distance or protection. Even the close relatives of those top empires died without a trace. It should be the amalgamation of will, Maximus concluded after a bit of thought. Amalgamation of will is a bundle of the will of every individual. As long as you have enough control and concentration, you can kill anyone as long as they are in the same dimension. After the Westle Empire conquered the others, Khan could freely seize the amalgamation of will of that empire. After that, killing others is as easy as cutting a string. No wonder the protection of the Arcane Continent is useless. No wonder no one dared to resist the rule of the Westle Empire. Without any emperor advancing to Tier 8 or having a higher master of the amalgamation of will, other empires can only escape or wait for death under the rule of the Westle Empire. This also caused the rule of the Westle Empire to spread so fast that they already conquered half of the cursed continent. If it were not for the process of digestion, maybe the whole cursed continent would surrender then and there. After all, will is not something that can be cultivated in a day's time. It needs recognition and belief, more importantly, time. This is getting interesting. Maximus smiled. He thought of letting the Westle Empire conquer everything, then he could just snatch it after all the hard work. No need to slowly cultivate the recognition and belief of people. The winner is the king. People will only recognize who wins, not the lose. Especially in these times of chaos, whoever is stronger is the king. After seeing that everything is fine, he took Doran back to the castle.
Let's go eat.
Westle Empire. On the throne, Ashoka was silently meditating, observing the situation of his territory. From people's lives, the environment, possible crises, enemies, etc. Khan ensured that everything was progressing in a good direction as he cultivated a pure amalgamation of will. He was already at Tier 8, and to have a chance to advance to Tier 9, he needed the purest amalgamation of will possible. This is the hardest hurdle that he needed to pass for everything to be worth it. Fortunately, he had the Overlord domain that can micro-control anything in his territory. From the will, thoughts, behavior, talent, anything that an individual has. As long as he had enough energy, he could silently change it all, creating the purest amalgamation of will in the history. Khan suddenly raised his eyebrow as he noticed movement in his amalgamation of will. It was absorbed so cleanly? Khan muttered in amazement. Although he could also absorb other amalgamations of will. He first needed to divert the belief of the majority of people to him. However, the amalgamation of will he placed on the Moonlight Empire was absorbed so cleanly without resistance. If not for its disappearance, Khan wouldn't even know it happened. Is this a perfect mastery or beyond? He only had an expert mastery in amalgamation of will and could barely grasp what was happening. Seeing a level of control beyond him, Khan couldn't help but admire and worry at the same time. Just when he was wondering who was responsible for it, a subordinate knocked on the door. Akomein. Your Majesty, the subordinate greeted with a bow. What's the problem? It's the Emperor of the Moonlight Empire, he is back, the subordinate said solemnly. The Westle Empire's spies were all over the cursed continent. As the main enemy of the Westle Empire, the spies in the Moonlight Empire would be more. A minute ago, a surge of energy swept through the Empire, alerting all the spies. After investigation, they were shocked to know that the Emperor of the Moonlight Empire had returned. I see, go back. Although there was no change in his face, Khan's worries deepened. The return of the Emperor of the Moonlight Empire could only mean one thing: he advanced to Tier 8. After seeing his subordinate leave, Khan anxiously tapped on his chair. Taking out a token, he contacted someone. It's time to fulfill your promise, Khan said solemnly. Don't worry, everything is in place, the other end said confidently. I can only hope, Khan muttered and put down the call. He knew a lot of this emperor. Possessing unknown physique. The strongest talent of the era. Being connected with a dimensional merchant. Many label that even made his confidence waver. And now everything is in place, I don't want some variable to disrupt it, Khan muttered coldly. Soon, the days and months passed by. Maximus and his family began to settle down in the empire and wait. With confidence in his strength, Maximus waited until the time was ripe so he could just pick the peach. In the meantime, he began to study the myriad world mall. Hundreds of trillion system points were poured every day that Maximus was too busy to care about the ongoing war. Maximus still had his priorities straight. The abyss was on the verge of explosion. Although they estimated that it would still be at least 100 years before the abyss gathered enough energy. Everything was uncertain. Maximus wanted to take all his time so he could cope up even if there was an emergency. A year later, Maximus quietly teleported to the city of Arcana to finish his transaction with the Apex sovereigns. Unlike in the Abyss, where he delivered what they ordered in a month. In Ethereum realm, he stretched the time to a year. This is to give him more time to sort and make it harder for others to detect any anomalies. Maximus, Fialon greeted. Adine. Maximus responded with a bow. They are all here, come. Fialon waved his hand and took Maximus inside the Tower of Arcana. You're finally here. I wonder if you really had everything we wanted? It couldn't be a scam, is it? Gahaha, he really dares. The crowd just laughed, not thinking Maximus would really default on the transaction. Don't worry, I have all you wanted, Maximus smiled wryly. Soon, Maximus handed out mountains of stage rings. The apex sovereigns began cautiously authenticated the products, making sure that everything is real. This went on for a few months until they confirmed that all of it was genuine.
Ahahaha, thank you, brat. With this, the Ethereum realm will go further.
An apex sovereign said excitedly. Indeed, with these materials, the number of beings advancing would skyrocket. TSK, the only thing is that it's too expensive. A high god from the divine continent couldn't help but complain. Unlike the apex sovereigns from Arcana and Beast continents, they were not as rich in magic crystals.
All they needed was faith. How could they care about mortal things like currency?
This is because you're too xenophobic. You should do more business in the Arcane continent if you want money, an apex sovereign from the Arcane continent mocked. For them, money is an indispensable thing. Just the tax they got from their territory were probably more than some of these gods' property. Don't corrupt us with your so-called money, a high god refuted with a frown. After trading with Maximus, almost all the magic crystals in their possession were spent. Being called poor explicitly touched their sore spot that they look at the one who spoke with anger. Ahahaha, if you don't have money, then shut up, ye, a man from the Beast continent jeered. Although they didn't have as much money as the powerhouses in the Arcane continent, they were not that poor either. They could still buy 1 or 2 tier 9 weapons as they wanted. Enough seeing that a fight might happen, Fialon stepped up. You should go on your way after you've confirmed your purchase. As you command, Great Venerable. Seeing a big man step up, they quickly shut up. Soon, those who didn't have money left, as the others handed Maximus another list. After Maximus finished his transaction, he turned to Fialon and thanked him. No problem, this is all for the Ethereum realm. Fialon couldn't just let thousands of apex sovereigns gather without any supervisor. Who knew what these crazy people could do? Then goodbye, Dean. As Maximus teleported back, he suddenly felt a pulling force. With no power to parry, his teleportation diverted as he was sucked into an unknown place. Chapter 299 Chopping Gods. Maximus breathed heavily as he tried to stabilize himself.
Where am I?
Looking around, he only saw distorted time-space. Reverse time dilation? He muttered with a frown. He could feel the space moving slower than the outside. Flying out, he felt a barrier further slowing him down.
Delaying me for what? Couldn't it be the Empire?
The only thing pressing him for time is the Empire. The further he is delayed, the more danger his empire, or rather his family, will face.
Who is it?
After thinking about various repercussions, he couldn't help but feel angry.
TSK, what a sharp fellow.
A voice couldn't help but admire Maximus for concluding all their plans with just a rough look.
A god. Or gods.
Maximus frowned, seeing thousands of gods surrounding him. Fortunately, it's only a bunch of new gods who didn't have control of their authority. The only thing that poses some threat is the 3 high gods.
It's you, the god of shadow, Nyx.
Maximus muttered, seeing someone he knew. There is also the god of thieves and the god of gambling that slowly followed Nyx. It's indeed me. If you're that smart, you should know why I'm here, Nyx teased in amusement.
Gets the treasure again?
Maximus muttered. Since he was ambushed by the god of shadow, he had been trying to find the cause of the problem. After a deep investigation, Nyx should misunderstood his transmigration, thinking that it was the birth of treasure.
That's right.
I didn't expect that the treasure was a contact device of the dimensional merchant, Nyx concluded as he laughed. All of Maximus' achievements, wealth, talents, and such finally came into place. As soon as he heard that Maximus had a connection with a dimensional merchant, he thought of this thing.
Ew.
Hearing what he said, Maximus could only admire Nyx for his cleverness. A contact device of the dimensional merchant? Isn't that exactly what the Myriad World Mall is? Although it's a little off mark, it's close enough. Smart people really exist everywhere, they could even conclude this. A contact device for the dimensional merchant?
So that's what he had been using to take money from us?
The gods at the scene couldn't help but be shocked by the revelation. Although Maximus didn't confirm anything. Based on his expression, there should not be much deviation from what Nyx said. Then that means we can conduct the transaction ourselves once we get it? With no intermediary, I wonder how much we can save. Those idiots from the Arcane and Beast continents would soon beg just to use our source. Imagining their future riches, the crowd fell into a frenzy as they looked at Maximus with greed.
Is that all?
This is just your guess. Are you sure you want to fight with me for this bit of profit? Maximus frowned and warned. He felt with each tick of the clock a day had passed. The longer he stayed here, the more worried he became.
A guess is enough. What more do we need?
A god mocked, belittling Maximus.
What you need is more brains.
Boom tilde. Maximus concentrated a dense group of amalgamation of will in his domain, instantly killing a god. After a few seconds, seeing their fellow didn't come back to life, their eyes bulged in shock.
What? How is this possible?
No matter the injury or fatalities, as long as their god's authority was intact, they were immortal. With their god's authority kept in the divine continent, they thought they could harass Maximus and delay him all they wanted. However, seeing that one of them fell in just one shot, they couldn't help but be nervous. Could it be an item from outside dimensions? They didn't believe that Maximus was capable of such an attack that could disrupt the innate ability of God's authority. Thinking of Maximus' connection with the dimensional merchant, they thought that the attack just now was a preventive measure given to him.
Ahumph.
Seeing his deterrent work, Maximus smiled as his killing intent surged like a tide.
Can you let me out now?
I don't want unnecessary bloodshed.
This dash.
The gods at the scene couldn't help but tremble as they looked at the god of shadow, the organizer of the event.
Ahumph. It's just a cheap trick,
Nyx said, calming the crowd down. However, deep inside him was fear. Nyx underestimated Maximus' control of the amalgamation of will. Seeing him kill one of their own like nothing, Nyx's body couldn't help but tighten. Calm down, it should be the amalgamation of will, Nyx explained as he felt an energy comparable to the essence of law.
That's it.
The crowd calmed down. They knew something about the amalgamation of will. The past holy emperors of the Cursed Continent even used this to be on par with the other 3 continents. An overwhelming power that can pull up one person to the height of a continent is certainly not simple. We just need to delay him for a few minutes,
Nyx said.
They were in a reverse time dilation domain produced by a 1-time initiate treasure. This treasure can even trap a peak apex sovereign from the ancients. Much less Maximus, a fledgling who didn't even reach tier 9. After some time after the Moonlight Empire was destroyed, Maximus wouldn't be able to use the amalgamation of will anymore.
A few minutes? Hey, you wish?
Maximus sneered. They didn't know that he mastered the amalgamation of will to transcendence. The limitation of the amalgamation of will did not apply to him anymore. As long as someone believes him, as long as his influence is still there, the amalgamation of will that should belong to him should still come to him. Just give up and give us the contact device. Nyx smiled, like fooling a child of a candy. Nyx had already planned everything. No matter how Maximus struggled, everything would be in vain.
Ahumph, I'll just kill everyone here and get out myself. Death.
Boom tilde. An indiscriminate attack targeted a crowd, sending them flying without any resistance. Cough. Cough. Cough.
So strong.
Even though they saw Maximus attacking, they couldn't do anything about it. Fortunately, there were many of them, so they somehow resisted the attack.
Not getting me out of here?
Ahahaha, it's useless. Seeing they were still delaying time, Maximus couldn't help but be anxious. Thinking of his family, Maximus felt a fire burning in his chest.
Since you're this persistent, then die.
This time he didn't target the weak gods anymore. His deterrence didn't seem to work with these thick-headed gods. Since that is the case, then kill the mastermind. Space cut. Maximus teleported to the back of Nyx and attacked after sealing the space.
Not so close.
Nyx saw his intention and parried, regardless of the energy spent. This was already a do-or-die situation. Nyx would either earn riches after defeating Maximus or die with his head cut off. Ice field. Before Nyx moved, he had his domain frozen, halting Nyx's movement.
This dash.
Nyx panicked immediately, feeling his essence of law blocked. As the space blade came closer and closer, Nyx felt his life flash before him.
A move.
Suddenly, a friend, the god of thieves, fired a beam of energy, sending him flying, dodging the attack.
Conquest.
Maximus said as his eyes seemed to burn with fire. Maximus teleported behind Nyx again and repeated his tricks. However, Nyx anticipated it in advance, easily dodging the attack. While dodging, Nyx looked at the god of thief, Flinch, with grateful eyes. "You owe me one," Flinch smiled helplessly. Maximus, who saw his attack failed, paused a little. These high gods still had a bit of combat skill. If this continued, they could kite him until his empire was destroyed. Thinking of these possibilities, he turned his attention to the new gods. Since he can't kill the mastermind, then kill the subordinates. Aditilde. As Maximus turned his head to them, they couldn't help but tremble. "A help?" a god shouted as he felt his head slowly slide off. Whoosh. Bam. Thud. The gods did their best to parry and dodge Maximus' attack. However, Maximus continued to rampage, killing gods like chopping vegetables. "A god of shadow, do something." A god couldn't help but urge. They didn't care anymore if the god of shadow was a high god or something. They just wanted to escape this hellhole as quickly as possible. Nyx, seeing this, just frowned but didn't do anything. It's not that he didn't want to help, the 2 attacks earlier already scared the heck out of him. All his attention was now on survival. He didn't have the energy to pay attention to dispensable new gods. Furthermore, as Maximus attacked, Nyx felt the amalgamation of will around Maximus quickly consumed. Damn. The god of shadow doesn't care about us, escape. A god finally couldn't help but escape. Escape? The others also followed. However, as they got closer to the border of the reverse time dilation domain, their movements slowed down like entering a new time zone. Idiots! Nyx muttered with a frown. There is no escaping this time domain. Unless the time is used or it's destroyed with an overwhelming strength, it's useless. Ayusti. Don't even think about escape. Chapter 300 The Death of God of Shadow. Seeing that they couldn't escape, they ran to the back of the god of shadow and the 2 high gods. Seeing this, Maximus didn't care and continued to attack. The 3 high gods, the god of shadow, the god of thieves, and the god of gambling, didn't care either. They even hoped Maximus would attack faster so he could consume his amalgamation of will more quickly. These new gods were just indispensable things. As long as their god's authority was not destroyed, a new god could be born quickly. A few thousand gods dying was not much to achieve their goal. Seeing the 3 high gods not caring and consciously protecting themselves, Maximus just sneered. What they didn't know was that Maximus was not consuming much of the amalgamation of will at all. The time here is slower than the outside. If every tick of time is a day, then for every tick of time Maximus would also recover a massive amount of amalgamation of will. What are you doing? Cooperate more if you didn't want to die. The god of gambling, Beterus, yelled seeing the unorganized attack. The thousands of new gods hearing was like a buzz pounding their chest. They were already doing their best, stalling for time, giving it their all so they could live. Yet you a high and mighty gods who just sat back dared to order us? Despair and anger began to well within their hearts. Seeing Maximus slowly chop them like vegetables, and the uncaring attitudes of the high gods made them crazy. If you don't help us, then let's die together, a god said in despair and attacked the high gods. Boom tilde. Presumptuous. Nyx said as he deflected the attack. Although it didn't damage him, it was insulting. An ally he brought dared to attack him? Isn't this brain-dead operation? Ahahaha, good. Maximus laughed, seeing this as a new idea emerged in his mind. I continue to attack these unfeeling high gods. In return, I vow not to kill you. Maximus said, even proclaiming a vow. He didn't care about the lives of these gods. He only wanted to get out of here, and that's it. Hearing Maximus, a new hope seemed to emerge within these new gods. Attacking a high god? A taboo that they didn't even dare to think of in the past seemed to be their only hope right now. The divine continent has a very strict hierarchy, from commoners, priests, and divine believers to gods, the new gods, the high gods, and the one supreme god. Each of these ranks is an insurmountable barrier that few dared to transgress. Looking at the 3 high gods that brought them here and promised them benefits, their eyes couldn't help but redden. What benefits? What future wealth? They were just here to be a cannon fodder for these high gods' greed. In just a few minutes of Maximus's rampage, hundreds of gods were killed without redemption. Now the devil is telling them to point their swords to the other side and they would be saved. Salvation was in front of them, they just needed to move their bodies. Attack! The god who attacked the god of shadow earlier started the crescendo. Boom tilde. Boom tilde. Boom tilde. Although his attack didn't cause any damage whatsoever. Seeing the devil really stopped attacking. He felt his life ascend to a new height, giving him endless power.
You really won't attack? They muttered in disbelief. Why would I attack my allies?
Maximus reassured.
Don't believe in his nonsense, the god of thieves, Flinch shouted. However, before he finished speaking, an attack came right at his face. Bam!
Damn.
Flinch didn't care anymore and retaliated, looking at the god who attacked him. It's you. D.
Finding his target, Flinch didn't care about unity whatsoever and attacked.
Not so close.
Maximus smiled and parried the attack for the god.
Don't worry, I have your back. You can confidently attack these high gods, I will protect you.
Maximus smiled with magnanimity like a ray of hope.
Is that true?
Although many didn't believe it, others fully believed it and began to attack the high gods regardless.
Thud. Bam. Sling.
Ahahaha, good, good, good.
Continue.
Maximus cheered.
What is this?
As the gods attacked, a dense amalgamation of wool descended upon him like crazy. This portion of amalgamation of wool was already catching up to what his guild could produce. After examining where it came from, a shock appeared on his face.
These new gods?
Do these gods still believe in him, the devil, in their hearts? As fear is indeed the fastest source of belief, Maximus couldn't help but sigh. Fortunately, he already has transcendent mastery of the amalgamation of will. Otherwise, he would be eroded by these impurities there and then. The amalgamation of will given by these gods is different. Besides being higher in quality, it's also much more chaotic. These gods are entities of their authority, thus the will they have also corresponds to the will of it. Basically, the faith that they should receive was cut off and was converted to the amalgamation of will and sent to him. Imagining trillions of millions of their believers, sending him their belief, he couldn't help but genuinely smile. Looks like I need to keep my promise, Maximus licked his lips. The amalgamation of will given by these gods is too much, that he was reluctant to kill them. As for his vow earlier, it's all a hoax. With his current capability, the enforcing power of the Ethereum realm is nothing. Of course, it's also because of his wordplay. Continue to attack these unfeeling high gods? First of all, even a god has feelings. Second, as long as they stop attacking, does that mean he could kill them? Such a loophole in the vow is, of course, not easy to exploit. The Ethereum realm world's will is not that stupid to fall for these word games. However, with enough strength, the Ethereum realm world's will would turn a blind eye, consciously looking for a loophole itself. After all, to enforce the rule, it needed to spend energy. The higher the being that it would enforce the rule, the higher the energy needed to spend. With the threat of the abyss, the Ethereum realm world's will was like a menopause lady that would save every penny it could. Thus, if it could, it would do its best to evade its responsibility. As compensation, I'll do my best to assist you. Maximus muttered as his killing intent was directed toward the god of shadow. As long as he can kill this god, he is already satisfied. Aditilde. Seeing Nyx surrounded, Maximus took his chance and attacked from a blind spot. With the attack occurring at the same frequency as the gods, Nyx was oblivious. However, just as the attack was about to hit, a high god interfered, deflecting his attack. The god of gambling, Maximus muttered through gritted teeth. These three gods are really loyal to each other. Two of his most lethal attacks were interrupted one after another. Nyx also noticed the commotion and looked at him.
If you wish.
Nyx mocked, simultaneously taking a grateful look at Beterus. This is really getting more and more troublesome, Maximus frowned. Given time, he was sure to kill anyone here. But as the seconds ticked by, he felt his flesh being cut off. From being trapped here to now, about 5 minutes had passed, meaning a year had passed outside. Since the god of shadow laid everything before trapping him. Then a year is enough for the Westle Empire to do something.
Think.
Maximus fell into a deep thought, thinking of a solution. With instinct, he continued to attack the high gods. At the same time making sure to protect the fledgling new gods. The time ticked by.
6 minutes. 7 minutes.
9 minutes. I got it, Maximus muttered excitedly as he looked at Nyx as if he were already dead. Slowly, he guided the attack of the gods, making them stronger and more precise. The three high gods, who were originally quite leisurely, began to frown. The attack became fiercer and fiercer, to the point that they were beginning to be injured.
How is this possible?
Beterus muttered in shock. The new gods that they didn't take in their eyes begin to injure them. The indispensable trash, which was initially cannon fodder, began to look like one body conducting an orchestra. "It's Maximus," Nyx said with a frown. Nyx found that every time Maximus moved energy around him, the gods would attack them. Furthermore, it was very precise and united, leaving them only able to parry, not dodge.
What is this?"
Flinch asked, noticing weird energy begin to gather around them, slowing down their movements. As they were attacked, he felt the space become slower and slower, and the energy around him becoming thinner and thinner. "I didn't expect you to master the amalgamation of will to this degree." As the attack became fiercer and fiercer, Nyx felt becoming deeper and deeper into the swamp. "Ahihi, now taste what it feels like to be besieged," a Maximus mocked. Earlier, he was surrounded by thousands of gods, now the positions were reversed. They became the grasshoppers on a rope, waiting to be killed. Hearing this, their faces changed as they thought of escaping. However, just as they moved, their body froze, deprived of any energy.
"It's time to finish this."
Maximus smiled, seeing his plan was a success. The amalgamation of will finally built up, disrupting all their conceptual function. After getting used to using the gods as his puppets for attack, Maximus was ready to give it his all. Gathering all the hundreds of quintillion units of the amalgamation of will, a massive pulse of energy began to erupt, sending shivers to all the individuals in the reverse time dilation domain.
"This dash. What kind of power is this?"
Although the attack was still being gathered, each pulse of energy felt like drums beating on their chests. Nyx's face also grew ugly as he looked at Flinch and Beterus.
"It seems that I'm going to die."
Nyx smiled wryly, looking at his two friends.
"Are these your last words?"
Maximus mocked as he concentrated all his energy to control all the energy around him. This attack, costing hundreds of quadrillion units of amalgamation of will, was not something that could be fired at will. If the amalgamation of will was a bullet, then he was a gun. As he was only tier 8 gun, he could only fire millions of bullets at once. However, using the bodies of thousands of gods, a pseudo-tier 9 beings, all his ammunition found an annihilation chamber to fit into.
"Adi."
A white beam shot out under the conjunction attack of the gods, hitting Nyx and the others without respite. The space seemed to freeze as all kinds of energy began to malfunction, furthering the despair for the three high gods.
"I failed her,"
Nyx muttered as he burned his god's authority, trying to provide a life-saving straw for his two friends. Although reluctant, Flinch and Beterus saw Nyx's intention and grasped the thin string of life presented in front of them.
"I see you in the next life,"
Nyx muttered one last time.